So, welcome back to another episode on the Maritime Careers and Training podcast. And today we're doing another episode on Diaries. And I'm very happy to say that today we have Shae McMurtry with us, formerly Wallace, who is currently a H&D cadet in his final year for Just Be Maritime, sponsored by Maritime London. Shae, do you want to just introduce yourself, a bit about who you are, how you found out about your career choice and what your aspirations are?
Yeah, so like I said, my name's Shae McMurtry. I've been a cadet now for 3 years, in my final phase, so phase 5. And yeah, it's been a roller coaster of up and downs and really, really fun in my opinion. But to take you all the way back to the beginning, initially started with me just not wanting to do an office job, essentially. I never wanted to go to uni, never wanted to kind of do the student life because it didn't interest me. I wanted to travel, wanted to see the world. So initially what I was thinking was Royal Navy, easiest kind of subjects, one everyone kind of knows about. So I was kind of going down that route until I had a friend that kind of started this course. And then again, a friend through a friend who said, just go to an open day in Southampton, which I'm studying now, and just see how you feel. And essentially, me and my parents drove up when I was 17, all the way up here from Cornwall. So it was a 5-6 hour drive. Went to the open day and realized, yeah, this seems pretty cool. And I think this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, sort of thing. So on the drive home, signed up, and kind of the rest is history. So I only found out about it through luck, really, and through word of mouth. And then went to an open day and kind of saw this has a lot of potential and kind of suits what I'm looking for.
Yeah, and we've spoken to JJ and we've spoken to Ruby, who are on the bachelor sort of side. You went on the H&D route. So what were your? Did you do A levels? Did you do? You obviously did. You do GCSEs? Did you do your A levels? What was your background before coming?
Yeah, so finished GCSEs, and like I said, at that point, I didn't want anything to do with college or uni. I just kind of wanted to kind of be out in the world and start learning. Very practical learner. So again, like I was thinking, was Navy, but obviously at that point I was 16, so I had to go to college. So I was biding my time doing my A levels. But then obviously I found out about this when I was 16, turning 17, and as soon as I found out about this was all I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I was very driven. At the time, my training manager and company, I was constantly emailing them saying, look, when can I start? When can I start? And they were kind of delaying me because of my age. I was 16. They didn't really want me coming too early. So I kind of had to wait around really until I was 17 doing A levels. Managed to finally get in on the January intake when I was 17. And then that's when it began. So yeah, I fobbed off my A levels. I said, oh, this is what I want to do. I'm going to be committed to it. So I don't know why I'm going to delay the process anymore. And that's why I'm on the H&D, because I didn't have to do enough UCAS points, I think, to do the FD.
And it goes back to some of the important things we've said on other episodes is, and I keep banging on about it, not everyone goes straight up Mount Everest.
No.
There are other ways of doing it. But I think that's a key thing. I think where you mentioned your training manager saying don't go to sea at your 17. Again, it's something that I personally recommend is having a year where you're 16, 17, 18 to get out of your system, the growing up process. Now, it doesn't work for everyone. Obviously, you are very well driven. So your ideologies and your mentality was already there. You knew what you wanted to do. But again, you do see some 16, 17s come in, and you probably got some on your cohort, and they do struggle.
Yes.
And it's the growing up process is quite steep. So what did you do for A levels? What were the subjects, or what would you recommend for the deck route?
Yeah, I mean, it was tricky because obviously when I first chose my levels, it was nothing to do with maritime or the merchant navy of what I was thinking. It was completely separate. It was actually interior architecture is what I was looking at. So it was very different. It was completely opposite to what I'm doing now. I was doing business, and then it was an art and design sort of architecture sort of route, and then a bit of sport on the side as well. I definitely recommend anything to do with maths if you do want to do A levels. Prior to this cadetship, anything to do with maths is definitely so recommended because of how maths heavy this cadetship turns out to be, no matter what route you do. I think just keeping that ticking over from college and from school is so recommended. So anything with that sort of background, just to keep you churning over essentially by the time you get here.
And down in Cornwall, they obviously have the Falmouth Marine School. I'm not sure if you're aware of. Yeah. And did you consider one of those courses at the time?
No, I mean, if I'm being brutally honest, as soon as I found out about this, that was what I was driven to do. Everything on the side, such as Royal Navy, and I was even looking at Marines, I just dropped everything and said, this
is the
perfect
way
for me.
forward.
So
I think the opportunity to learn, to have your qualifications paid for, and and all those sort of things is a big pull. And of course, the H&D, you're coming out at level 5.
Yep.
So it is just a title. Again, we've mentioned this before. If you compare the H&D level 5 to the foundation degree, they're both level 5s. Are you considering topping up to the full bachelor's now?
Yeah, so that was at the start of the year. I was actually all guns blazing saying, let's do that. Long story short, it hasn't ended up working due to bursary allowances and just in terms of financially not being able to stay in Southampton and getting it done. And also, I can't disagree that I just am so driven to get back to sea now. I've already spent from February till now wanting to go back to sea, and I'm just kind of so eager to go back and get started on my career. And I'm now looking forward, which we'll speak about later, about in terms of what's next once I finish cadetship, that although I could do it, I'm so driven about going back to sea. That's kind of...
But again, there's nothing stopping you coming back later. And this is the big thing. You don't have to get everything done so quickly.
Yeah.
You know, again, goes back to that point. Everyone makes their own way up Mount Everest. You know, you don't have to go straight up, and actually going away, getting the money back in, the experience, the knowledge, doing what you love, and then coming back is always a opportunity. So again, phase 5. So you're pretty much wrapping up now.
Yeah.
SQA exams right in the midst of them at the moment.
Finished them last week.
Good. Oral exams coming up.
Yes, very excited. I said it's this year, at least for H&D, phase 5 is the everything. It just feels like you've kind of been working up, and the last few phases were a little bit tricky, but kind of ramping up all until this moment. And like I said, it's been since February, and it's just been like exams more or less every month, every couple of months. But yeah, I'm in a good position, and yeah, like I said, excited and hopefully finish by the end of the year.
And so going to your sort of cadet experience so far, we're going to sort of look at day-to-day routines, expectations, onboard and shore-based training. Now, from what I remember, you've been on quite a variety of different types of vessels, which has really probably opened up your perspective. So can you sort of go over the vessels you've been on, and for each of those, if you wouldn't mind just sort of going through what a day-to-day life on each of those vessels look like?
Yeah, so initially going into the maritime world, all I was exposed to initially was the cruise ship industry and the passenger side, and that's all I kind of wanted to do. When I came to the open day, I saw the yachts, I saw the cruise ships, and was like, that looks fun. Looks like going to travel the world, so why not try that first? And luckily, I did get the opportunity to go on a vessel called Scenic Eclipse, which was a great first vessel to go on, considering the grand scheme of things. They're an expedition yacht, they call themselves, but still a passenger vessel with over 200 passengers. And like I said, they're expedition, so they're not the usual Caribbean and Med. They travel around the world constantly, do Antarctica, the Arctic. I was lucky enough to do both of them. Went to Japan and lots of other exotic locations. So day to day for me initially, like for many other cadets when you first join as a decky, you're just kind of on the tools essentially, not really on the bridge, actually driving or doing anything too practical, because you're just learning the ship, learning the day-to-day life of how it works. To be on the vessel, like I said, when I joined on Scenic, I only just turned 18, so I was still very fresh, and everything was very new to me, just very exciting. And luckily, on my vessels, I had at the time the chief officer was British, so he knew the British training scheme as well, and knew as I'd just come out of phase 1, which was only 4 months long for H&D. So still, you're very fresh. You don't really know anything, in my opinion, in terms of the cadetship. So it was very good just to be practically straight in. And yeah, so essentially it was just day to day, every morning waking up, usual time, not doing watches at this point, but you're waking up, reporting to the chief officer, and he essentially assigns you duties for the day, which is normally working with a deck team, scrubbing the deck and just learning what it means to be a seafarer, to be honest.
Yeah, and then you went on to other types of vessels there?
Yeah, so then joined that one in the May, was on board for 4.5 months, had a weekend off, and then joined another ship, which was called Island Sky. She was a very small passenger vessel again. Same sort of criteria. I was still very new, getting a few more roles on the bridge, but again, just mostly with the deck team, understanding how the deck life works. As I'm now becoming more experienced, I had a month off at home just to recalibrate and kind of sort out what I want to do. And then I went back to sea again for another month on Windstar, so it kind of totaled 7.5 months. I got in my first sea phase, and that was on the Star Pride, another passenger vessel. And that again was now leaning more towards the bridge, as they could see I was a lot more experienced now. I kind of knew how it was to be on the ship. And yeah, so the more day-to-day was actually now going on watches with the deck officers and supervising and understudying them, and kind of just watching how they evaluate on the bridge. Finally, moving on to my last phase, I was very lucky to get the opportunity to sail on the Sir David Attenborough, which I was my last ship. Spent 5 months on board, and it was the one that I went to Antarctica on. And obviously at this point, you're coming to the end of your cadetship, so you're very clued up on what it means to be a deck officer. So at that point, I was essentially taking the role as a third officer almost and carrying out all the designated duties. So whether that's maintenance for LSA, but mainly on the bridge and actually navigating, carrying out watches, which was a great experience, and a lot of ship handling, which I was very, very grateful for the captain. All British crews, they knew practical experience was the best.
Yeah, and it is a quite sought after vessel to get on, from what I've heard from a lot of the cadets. So again, it must have been really, really good. And it took a lot of weight off of your shoulders, actually, getting a lot of your sea time in the first phase as well, because the deck officers, it's a minimum of 12 months sea time. So again, having that opportunity to have hit a lot of the sea time in the first phase probably took a lot of the anxiety away.
Yeah.
So looking at onboard and shore-based training, obviously onboard, you're completing your TRB. How did you find completing the TRB? How did you find the support on board and to getting the task signed off?
Yeah, again, like I said, I think in terms of how a cadetship can go, I've been very lucky in terms of the ships I've been on and the officers I've sailed with and how they kind of nurtured me when I first joined. Because I've got to admit, when I first joined, I was very excited and very driven, but just very nervous about the TRB and what it meant. I was very excited just to try and get things signed off within the first few weeks. I didn't even know what the basics were. And I was panicking about this TRB, thinking I can't lose this. I need to get signed off as soon as possible. But I was kind of taught very early on just to relax. There's a lot to learn from even just waking up on time for watch, let alone getting the TRB signed off. So yeah, it was a learning curve for me in terms of learning how to manage that and essentially just taking every day as it comes. You can't rush ahead or look forward on when you go to sea, and it's just taking every day as it comes, really.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing to sort of understand. And I always sort of explain to the cadets is you do have your TRB and stuff to get through, but if you go on board demanding things straight away, the officers will be a bit apprehensive.
Yeah.
And at the same time, if you do sit back for too long and don't seek out the work and show that eagerness to participate, they'll also lose interest in you. It's got to be driven by yourself primarily, but understanding and reading the dynamic of the bridge,
Yeah.
reading the dynamic of the people you're working with. And if you show willingness, they will support you back. There's no doubt about it. Shore-based training. So primarily within a university setting, how have you found the shore-based training? Obviously you've done the academic ramp in the first year as that H&D,
Yeah.
and then picking up the level 4 and level 5 modules. How have you found it overall?
Yeah, like I said, initially before any of this, I didn't want to do any sort of uni or studying. But I've learned to really actually love it. I think what it means is because I know what I'm learning, maybe not with other uni degrees, is that the stuff I'm learning every day means something. I'm going to be using every day when I actually become an officer. So the passion to drive and to actually learn is just so much more internal, and I really, really enjoyed it actually. And like I said, every lesson you go into, this is important. So I said it's been difficult. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It has been hard work, and it's one thing I highlight to everyone is there's lots of highs and lows. I really enjoyed it, but you have to be determined because there's a lot of pressure in terms of getting assignments done and to passing exams and knowing that when you use these exams, they're going to be going and working with you when you go forward into the future. So yeah, a lot of pressure in terms of what I put on myself, but I would say overall I've really enjoyed it. And like I said, I've become really passionate about it, which I didn't expect.
And I think the other thing to understand is not every lecturer delivers in the same way.
No.
So again, you can't turn up to these lessons and expect all the lecturers to teach you the way you want to be taught. There is a balance that all lecturers will support and guide and take people's learning styles and things into considerations, but particularly on the deck side, the class sizes are 45, 50 sometimes plus.
Yeah.
Your class size was quite reasonable.
Yes.
It's on the smaller side. So it's that balance to enact, and you'll have people in the room who it'll feel like knows everything, and you'll be sat there going, I ain't got a Scooby here.
Yeah.
But actually, they might not be good at something else, so you can work together and use it to your advantage. So initial culture shocks in terms of adapting to life at sea. Did you have any sort of initial shocks?
I wouldn't say anything too that like threw me off. I mean, there's always the kind of fatigue that hits you when you've been on a ship for 4 months and you're kind of thinking, wow, this is getting a bit much. But nothing too extravagant. Obviously I joined when I was very young, only just turned 18 2 weeks prior. So joining a vessel, especially when I grew up in Cornwall, is kind of very in my little village, and moving to Southampton was one thing, let alone in terms of probably not the ship itself, but my first ever solo flight was from Heathrow to San Diego, so 12-hour flight. So even that experience of, you go to the airport, you fly 12 hours in a completely new country, place, continent, you're just confused, and then joining the ship the next day. So it's very overwhelming initially. So you have to be ready for the just new things every day. But that's what I found interesting and exciting, that every day was different. You're waking up in a new port, you're waking up in a new place. So
Yeah.
yeah, being ready for that, I think is.
And I remember I joined Commodore Goodwill first time, so it was only local. I only had to go to Portsmouth, but my second ship was Ardmore Centurion, and they flew me out to Texas.
Yeah.
And I was like, brilliant, yep, Texas. And then they say, oh, here's your accommodation, and it's on the highway. You can't get anywhere.
Yep.
America's just massive. And then there was delay after delay with ports and stuff, and you sit there and think, finally, this is a bit mental.
Yeah.
But then once you get on board, you get so used to it. Getting off, I was just like, yeah, walking around easy. So yeah, I agree with those sort of aspects. And again, going away from home is quite tricky. So often with the cadetships, the training providers will allow you to select where you want to go.
Yeah.
But for yourself, you didn't have a local one. But it's always good, and it is recommended to pick one a little bit further afield, so you have that opportunity to explore different avenues and get used to being away from home. So in terms of the training path and core skills, what are the key subject matters that you had to study within the deck side of things, and certainly at sea? What were the key elements and topic areas you had to cover?
So like I said, the main ones when I first joined the passenger vessels are very different to my last vessel, because that was more cargo heavy. The main thing I learned is, I didn't expect it, but being on a bridge is the kind of the workhorse of the ship. Everything channels through the bridge normally, whether it's to do with the engine room maybe, or even cargo or passengers. Everything normally sibs through the bridge, at least for a bit of communication. So as an officer, you actually gain a big managerial role, which I didn't expect, especially on the passenger vessels, is you're actually working with a lot of people. So that I didn't expect. But in terms of just normal day-to-day navigation, collision regulations, and understanding how you adapt to different sea states was just on front of your mind constantly, and you kind of don't realize how much you're actually multitasking constantly. Is you one moment you're picking up the call for maybe the galley, and next thing you're altering course for a collision situation. It's constantly you're thinking, but initially that's a lot to think about, but you realize that you multitask and everything actually becomes very easy in terms of you just kind of sifting through that. Like I said, when you move on to the cargo vessels, it's different in terms of there's a lot more you have to think about with the cargo that you're bringing on, and how that is affected by the weather. I was very lucky, like I said, on the David Attenborough, that we also did a lot of ice navigation. So that aspect as well, which is my favorite thing I've learned, and something I want to do for the rest of my life. Driving through ice is just an incredible experience. So even that element is just, there's so much into it, which when you first join, you don't realize how much you're going to learn.
And in terms of the sort of challenges and lessons learned, so what were the common challenges you had for yourself personally, but from some of your colleagues or fellow cadets?
Yeah, I think the main one is knowing that cadetships around the world are very different. I learned very early that European cadetships are very different to the British one. Like I said, I only had 3 to 4 months of uni learning before I went to sea, so it was very short and very much just like the basics of this, what you need to know before you go to sea. Whereas some of the international cadets that I sailed with had done their full 3 years of training and then went to sea. So there can often be a lot of expectations for you as a British cadet to know a certain level, and it can be a bit disheartening when you kind of go onto a bridge and they expect you to know so much, and you're just fresh out of the college not knowing anything. So that I struggled with a little bit initially, just understanding that I don't know that much, but I will eventually. So just kind of knowing how to work with those officers can be difficult. Like I said, I joined the vessel when I was just turning 18, so that was a struggle. But I think if anything, that helped me so much learn about who I was as a person and how you deal with those sort of people, because it's all life skills that you take on, not just for the cadetship.
And the learning curve when you go to sea is massive, isn't it?
I mean,
it's crazy.
yeah.
I've said on the previous episode, when I came home, all my mates are like, "Who are you?" You were so sure before you went away for the sea, and it's okay for that to happen. I guess the other common challenges that we hear a lot about is like you said, is the long hours and sort of learning under pressure. Really.
Yeah.
So just key bits. How did you find? Obviously, as an industry, we're very cultural. We're very multicultural. Different people from lots of different backgrounds. I've worked with Romanians, people from Croatia, from Montenegro, from Philippines, all of those type of things. How did you find dealing with multicultural crew and what we call the shipboard hierarchy?
Yeah, so like I said, initially, I grew up in a little town called St. Justin, Cornwall, so it's very much you know everyone, you know where everyone lives, you know what schools they go to, sort of thing. So going to Southampton, then 4 months later, I'm on a ship in America, not knowing anyone, and the crew are obviously very diverse. And if anything, I loved it because you just again you're meeting so many people and so many different nationalities that have just so many different upbringings to you, but yet you've all been brought on this ship together and you have to gel. There's no two ways about it. You have to be a family. And I love the fact that within 2 weeks I already knew everyone's name, I knew everyone's background, and you gel so quickly. And it surprises you how, because you're kind of almost forced to. These people you're working, eating, sleeping, and you know everything with. So it's great, but it's something you have to be careful with because obviously there's a lot of things you don't know as well. And I took it as just a learning curve. There's lots of things, especially with the Filipinos and working with them pretty much every day. Um, Sleeping with them in the lower bunks as well when you're working with them every single day. And there's a lot of things you have to learn. But that's the beauty of it. And if you were to stay in the UK, in my opinion, you wouldn't be exposed to these things. So
Yeah, I think that's really key. Key characteristics and attributes required.
for a cadet, just being grateful for the position you're in, being humble and just ready to learn. If you go in thinking you're better than everyone, then you're instantly shut down. I think in terms of, especially as a young cadet like myself, yeah, there's just so much to learn and you never stop learning throughout your whole seafaring career, and just being open to that. Even if you know something, I got taught very early, even if you feel like you know it, just take a step back and just listen, because the reason is you probably won't and they're going to give you some good advice. So
Yeah. So, career progression and certification. Obviously, moving on after the cadetships, what are your ambitions then, long term?
yeah, I mean, as like I said, I'm very driven. I've been very driven since I started this, and I like to think captain is in the making and very soon. I'm quite eager to push on, but like we said at the very start, since being in this industry, especially the last 3 years, I've learned how many opportunities there are. So I also need to rein myself in sometimes and just take a step back and realize if I want to go to the yachts for a few years and just enjoy that, if I want to progress and do a bit of ice navigation on something like the David Attenborough, there's so many opportunities for me. Um, but right now I'm thinking get away to sea, like I said, get my chief mate's ticket and hopefully masters as soon as possible. Because at that point in your world's yours, so you can go whenever you want. But yeah, like I said, there's so many opportunities, and I'm just excited to get to see and be on a job as a proper officer and see how I feel.
Yeah, and for you yourself, you've had a lot of opportunities elsewhere through performance and putting yourself forward. So, Cadet of the Year at Walsall Maritime School,
Yeah.
and you've represented Just Be Maritime at Seaworks. Do
Yeah.
you want to just sort of talk about how those opportunities came up and what you feel the value behind them are?
Yeah, I mean, I think this cadetship brings so many people together in terms of all over the country. And like I said, even when you're on ship, you have to gel with so many people. And I think it's just being driven in yourself. I think it's very easy to be lost in the crowd in a school like this. And even when you go on ship, to kind of just lose the meaning, but like the meaning for actually doing this cadetship in the first place. I've always been very driven in myself and just thinking I'm gonna take every single challenge on the front foot and just accept it, just saying yes to things. It's very easy for opportunities to be given to you and just to feel a bit nervous and say, no, I'm okay, thanks. But if you, every time you're put in these opportunities and you're being given these opportunities, sorry, and you're taking them on, you're getting to know a lot of people, and it's who you know in this industry. And the more people I know, I'm still in contact with pretty much all the captains I sailed with, which I feel is really good. And that's how I got the opportunity with Seaworks. So I was sailing on board the David Attenborough, and it was the captain that actually came up to me and said, could you please represent the David Attenborough and Just Be Maritime and do a talk at Seawork? And initially I was a bit hesitant. I thought, oh, I don't think I could do that. And he kind of let me have a few weeks to settle on it. And he said, I know you can do it. And I loved it. I loved doing that chat. It was amazing because at the time I was speaking to 14, 15, 16-year-olds, people that was my age when I first started cadetship. So
Yeah, and
it was
trust
great.
me, I've been teaching now since 2018. Stand up in front of a classroom, students, easy. Stand up in front of a room full of parents
Yeah.
or training managers, and even now, I still start to shake and get a little bit nervous. I think it's natural process, right?
Yeah.
Um, so going on to sort of advising the next sort of cadets, because I think this is something you're really passionate about, especially with your background. What would your advice be to an aspiring cadet on how to first prepare for the journey and joining the cadetship?
Yeah. I think like I said, taking every day as it comes. I think it's so easy to think 3 years is a long time, but I think you probably heard cadets say how quickly it flies by, and just living in the moment and not being worried about the exams in 2 months' time or in a year's time, or you're joining a ship in 5 months and you're scared about joining it. Just every day as it comes, it goes very quick, and before you know it, the cadetship's gone, and you're going to be possibly an officer, or maybe you don't want to go to sea anymore. And it's just I found the thing I always took on with me every time I went on to watch and every time I joined a vessel was just being very grateful for the opportunity I had. Like I said, I was very young when I joined, and I still had a lot of friends that were in the same village. And when I went home after 3 years and said hello to them, they're still in the same position that they are now, and they love it. But for me, I couldn't do that. And it's just being grateful that this cadetship is paid for, and all the exams are paid for, and all the training is paid for, and you get a bursary allowance every month. And that's a great position to be in, especially once you
Yeah.
finish and you're going to have no debt, at least in my position. I'm just so grateful and humble for being given these opportunities, and just enjoy it. I think that's the
Yeah.
most important thing. It's difficult and it's hard work, but you have to enjoy it.
What about in terms of your advice for them seeking out which cadet route is best
Mm.
for them and the application process? What would you sort of say to them for that?
Yeah, so like I said, I'm a little bit biased in terms of my cadetship. I always recommend trying to get with a charity if possible. I'm with Maritime London. There's other ones such as Trinity House. I'm biased in the fact that I think they're the best because you get so many opportunities on different vessels like myself, and you're not subjected just to one vessel, which can kind of slow down your career progress a little bit. If you're going to be on one vessel as a cadet and then you try and go to other vessels as an officer, you may not get those same opportunities. So in my biased opinion, I think a charity is always best. And then my fallback on that, just from my experience, would be passenger vessels, because it's always guaranteed sea time, which is the main thing. There's lots of horror stories in terms of cadets not getting the sea time, and no matter what vessel you're on, it's getting the sea time. So in my opinion, charities and passenger vessels.
And mindset to have during training. So if you were to speak to a cadet, what sort of mindset would you say they need to go into it with?
Um, Being strong, being passionate about the job you're doing. Like I said, there's so many highs, but also so many lows, especially when you've been at sea for a little while and you're just kind of really not enjoying where you are at all. It could be a lot worse. I know it's a bit bad to say, but it could be so much worse. And just be grateful and just be, yeah, passionate. Every day is so fun in this cadetship. There's always highs and lows, and even the bad days when you're studying and you feel like you're in a bit of a hole. Once you finish that exam, the weight's off your shoulders and you're on to the next one. Like I said, I'm on my last exams now, and I'm just so excited to get going again.
Yeah, and we've both mentioned this already. The growing up process is so
Mm.
quick, but advice in building professionalism as early as possible.
Um, like I said, I think the main thing I learned very young, and I feel like I've matured in the last 3 years so much, and it's just because I listened. I was humble, and I kind of, every ship I joined, it was tricky. Again, like I said, 4 different ships, 3 of them were within a 7 month period. So there was a lot of new people. The social battery was very low at points, but it's just every day waking up and saying, I'm going to listen today. I'm going to take this day on and be excited. Because as soon as you start thinking negatively, you can go in such a little spiral, especially when you're on board a vessel. So every day, even if you're not feeling too enthusiastic, just being happy and ready to listen.
Yeah, and we're just going to close with a couple of quick fire questions then. Very briefly, first impression of the first ship you joined?
Nervous, excited, scared, and just ready to get going.
Yeah, biggest shock at sea?
Biggest shock at sea. Probably just the people you meet. I was just so excited in terms of how quickly you become and bond with people that you never thought you'd meet. And I'm still in contact with a lot of them now. And that happens within a few weeks.
Favorite port or memory?
Antarctica. I absolutely loved it. If anyone gets the opportunity to do any sort of ice navigation, take it on.
And last one thing you'd tell your pre-sea self?
Work hard, but also live in the moment, enjoy it, and just take it easy, because, like I said, it flies by very quickly. And a lot of officers, like they said, will look back at their cadetships and they miss it and wish they just enjoyed it a little bit more.
Thank you so much, Shae, for taking part, and thank you to Just Be Maritime and Maritime London for allowing you to take part in this. Hopefully, your stories and these podcasts can help inspire some other people to take a view or a career in maritime. And as always, for anyone who is interested, would like to, please do visit our website. www.britishmaritime.co.uk/podcast for more information about episodes and upcoming episodes. And for those who wish to donate to the charity of the year, please just go to the bottom of the page and press donate, where you can make any donations to our charity of the year. Thank you very much, and see you next time.